Well, my man, Carl Lampton, thank you so much for joining us. I have a room full here at Velma Jackson High School, and we're recording this for our friends at Rosa Scott, Ridgeland High School, and Germantown High School, and for our YouTube channel. And this is our ninth grade class. We've been talking about the law, public safety, and corrections career cluster, as well as the government career cluster, which I have a hand in as well. And I know you're a veteran of law enforcement. I gave them kind of what I know about your background, about you were in the West Point Police Department. And now with the State Capitol Police Department, and how is a big difference in what you did then and what you do now. But I know you've been in law enforcement a long time and have a great career story. So we'll let you tell us about it and what all you did and what all you do and what all you guys do at the State Capitol Police.
Okay, well, we're going to start off by correcting. I'm not with State Capitol anymore. I'm with the AG's office right now. So
I guess I hadn't seen you in a while. I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. We didn't get a chance to talk at the basketball meeting over text. So yeah. I'm currently I work with Mississippi Attorney General's office in the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit, which is our purview. Is we take care of patients that are on Medicaid. That's federally funded. So I'm on a federally funded task force. I'm on a federal task force. The kind of crimes that we investigate are abuse, neglect, exploitation of people that are in any type of licensed facility. Wow. Also, you have fraud. We have widespread fraud when it comes as far as Medicaid is concerned. And what we do is I investigate fraud as far as people fall something. You have PCAs, people that come out and take care of people in their home. I handle falsified timesheets. I handle caregivers. Like, say a therapist will say he saw you and he didn't really see you, and he puts it down that he saw you, and they bill Medicaid for it. You got hospitals or some type of facility. Sometimes what they call overbill. They do a level 1 exam, but then they charge for a level 5 exam, which is more money. And then one case that I just was helping on, we had a doctor that in the Delta, he was putting people on hospice. And with hospices, that's at the end of your life when there's nothing else they can medically do for you, and all they really try to do is make you comfortable. What they were doing was they were putting unsuspecting people in the Delta on hospice and charging the government for it. And so we just finished the case up in Greenville, and he was found guilty on 8 of 12 counts. So it was a very successful investigation.
Oh, I did not know any of that. So I'm glad you brought me up to speed. But can you take us how you got into law enforcement and kind of your past that you've done before you got to where you are and the steps you've taken? Because I was telling the kids, for what I knew, and you told me you had quite the exciting times up there in the Golden Triangle for several years. So,
okay. Let's start with that. I started in West Point, Mississippi on what we call auxiliary, which is part-time, you volunteer your time type situation. This was back in 1996. And the reason I got honestly involved in law enforcement, is I'm an adrenaline junkie. And West Point's a small town, and it was kind of like Dodge City. Every third or fourth call, you're fighting with suspects. And, I'm, as a young man, that's exactly what I wanted. I wanted the excitement. And I did that auxiliary work for a while. I moved to Memphis. And then when I decided that this is something that I wanted to do, I came back in 2000 and I joined the police department then, went through the academy, and started out on patrol, just like everybody else. I started working my way up. I worked on patrol for 8 years, had an opportunity to do some other things. I went to what's called Accident Reconstruction School back in 2005, and that kind of started me on the path of being an investigator. Accident investigation is when you have a fatal car crash or a car crash where somebody's hurt real bad. You have to have a technical investigator come in and determine the root causes of the accident. Okay. So I went to that training first while I was still, quote unquote, on the road, as we call it, being a patrolman. Got promoted, and then I had the opportunity to start with investigation. So I went investigations and did regular investigations for a while, and then became a narcotics investigator for a while, did that, then went back to general investigations. Did that till 2014, and then I got married in 12, and then I moved down here to be with my wife. took a little break, and then I went back to Capitol Police in 2018. Because really, you talk to the older people, the older heads, say once you get law enforcement in your blood, it kind of stays in your blood. So that's what I wanted to do. I got back in it, started with Capitol Police, and Capitol Police was so much different than a normal police department. It was really, really slow. And then I had the opportunity. I did that for a while and met some good people, and then had the opportunity to join the AG's office in the Medicaid fraud unit. So that's where I am right now.
Awesome. Now, and you said that you were an adrenaline junkie. So what type of people are these law enforcement agencies looking for? Because you hear various reasons why people get into it. Some people like yourself are adrenaline junkies. I've heard, combat veterans say they still have they had the military blood in them. Some people really want to make a difference. Some people like being in the middle of everything. So for somebody to be successful in law enforcement, what kind of traits would they need to have?
Okay, well, the first thing you have to have is you have to have patience. And you have to have an acceptance of someone that may not be like you, may not look like you, may not think like you. I think patience is the biggest thing. You got to have a heart to serve your community, because you're serving people. And a lot of times you have to have compassion. And that all is kind of wrapped in the need the desire to serve, because you have to understand, when you are dealing with someone in law enforcement, you're normally seeing them on their worst day. They've been a victim, or they've done something, they've done something and they feel bad, or they're mad because they got caught, or whatever it may be, but it's not the best day. And you have to take that in consideration when you're dealing with people, is that this is not their best day. So you have to be mindful of that when you deal with people.
Yeah. And I think, and we all watch the cop shows and, the reality ones and even the dramas, we see all the stuff that the media portrays, but there's so much more to it than that. Like you said, there is the personal skills, and then obviously the paperwork skills have to be, the reports have to be filled out correctly. You have to be able to testify in court correctly. There's a lot of communication that goes into law enforcement, other than just let's do car chases and kick down doors.
Yes. And that's the thing, that's part of it that you really don't see, is you have to do good reports. And when I was in the 9th grade, my father, I had an option to either take Spanish or take typing. And my father made me take typing. And I took typing, and I said, I'll never use it. But that's one skill Absolutely. that I have used in the past 20 years is my typing skills. And what you have to do, you have to understand that you have to write good reports. And if you're going to, and that comes with writing papers and understanding the English language, grammar, punctuation, because what we don't understand is you can do a report, but that report says a lot about you as a person. Do you care about, do you have a desire to put forth your best foot? Because you can write the simplest report, but it lacks detail. And that report, once they tear it apart and they see John Doe, well, all they know about John Doe is the report that he's written. So you have to be mindful, and you have to have a sense of wanting to do good work. And a lot of it is you have more paperwork. Everything you do has to be documentation, whether it be a traffic violation, a misdemeanor arrest, or a felony arrest. You all have documentation, reports, things you have to turn in, because everything has to be accounted for.
Yeah. And especially, if somebody's been a victim of a heinous crime, the last thing you want is to have a misprint on the police report, missing information, because, we all see in the movies, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. If something can't be documented in court, somebody could be a victim of a crime, and that person could get off scot-free.
Yes. And if you don't include something in your report, if something was supposed to be in your report and you don't put it in there, then when it comes down to the trial, you can't bring it back up, because they're going to say, it's not in your report. If it's not in your report, it didn't happen. If it's not in black and white, it didn't happen. So you have to be, you can't half do anything. You have to be very thorough and do your job well, because like you said, I have been on the other side. I've done very good reports, and it's been the point where when you do good work, then the defense attorney has really nothing to argue, because They're going to pick apart. So that's the first thing they're going to do is pick apart your report. You missed this comma, you missed this punctuation. And you may not think it's a big deal because what they're going to say is, if you missed this, what else did you miss? Well, if you missed that, what else did you miss? Well, you just didn't do your job. And how can you convict my innocent client when you didn't do your job by doing this report? This is something simple as a report. You didn't do that well. How do I know you didn't botch that? How did I know you didn't plant that evidence on my client?
Absolutely.
That's what it.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because, they complain all the time about, I'm not going to need to know how to write, and I'm glad you mentioned the typing as well, because, and just in my life, I've never had a job where I didn't have to know how to type. It's an extremely important skill, especially if you're going to work efficiently, because obviously there's only a certain amount of hours in the day, and you guys got to do enough stuff as it is. Now, one thing I also want to ask about is the opportunity for women in this field, because obviously it's you think males and, big, burly, strong males when you're looking at police work, but there's also a great opportunity and demand for females right now.
Yes, it is. Because a female or a lady will bring a different perspective to this situation. We as men are hands-on. We're going to handle the situation. But sometimes it takes a soft voice, and I have found that this right here will get you in trouble, and this right here can get you out of trouble. You can diffuse a situation by talking to someone. And some of the ladies that I have worked with are very, very good at talking their way out of situations, because naturally, you have, most women are going to be small in stature. So they know they can't always fight with someone. So they know they're going to have to talk their way out of things. And I have been with women that's what they want to do. They want to grab, and they want to be physical. But as far as opportunities, there's so many opportunities out there for young ladies to be in law enforcement, because the quote unquote glass ceiling has always had been there in the past, but now there's ladies that are becoming chiefs. There are ladies just, as a matter of fact, the chief of UMC police is a lady from Chicago. Wow. And they bring different perspectives to the job. Things that we don't think about, they think about. So it's a good mix, and it makes you a more well-rounded department when you have a mix of everyone, male, female, black, white, and Asian, Hispanic. And I've always been a firm person to say, the police department and the fire department and just your services as a whole need to reflect the people that they serve. Absolutely. So if you are in a community that's predominantly African American, then your police department needs to be predominantly African American. If your the city that you serve is predominantly Hispanic, then your department needs to be predominantly Hispanic, because what happens is we all are raised different. We all have, everybody has different traditions in their family. And when you go into a community, if the officer does not necessarily look like or grew up like the people that they serve, then they have to work extra hard to have that empathy and have that understanding to how they handle conflict, how they handle issues, it's just a respect thing. If you're going to serve in a community, you need to understand how that community works. Absolutely. And women have a good ear and a good eye for that.
Yeah. And you hear some of these women that have gotten into it, and they say it's important because a lot of times in a hostile situation, somebody's going to feel most comfortable talking to a woman. So, yes. So just their presence in itself can be a huge deal to any type of situation. Now, we have a mixture of goals for some of these kids. Some of them want to do the college route. Some just want to start working immediately. So what are some of the requirements, as far as for these local law enforcement agencies, and what type of training would a person have to go through in order to start being a certified law enforcement officer in Mississippi?
Okay. That depends on the department. A lot of departments these days want you to have at least a 2-year degree, but that's not necessarily true. What I would suggest, if someone is interested in law enforcement, if you find the department that you're interested in joining, find out what their requirements are now so you understand what you need to do. Because some will tell you, if you have military experience, that will substitute for college. Some of your smaller departments, they don't necessarily, they would like it, but they don't necessarily require that you have a college degree or 2 years of college. Some of your bigger departments, they will require that some of your bigger departments will require that you have at least a 2-year degree or 60 hours, but it's not necessarily a requirement. But what you're going to have to do is it's going to be a little bit harder for someone, just say 18 years old, to go down to JPD and say, hey, I want to be a police officer and I want to go to the academy. Because you're going to have to show that you're responsible. You're going to have to show some type of work history. You can, so it's going to be a situation where this is something that you want to do. And also going to college will help you understand, be able to know how to absorb information and know how to put it back down on paper. It will give you a sense of accomplishment if you do decide to go to school because you've accomplished this particular goal. And there's a lot, when you go to the police academy, there's a lot of, and this is just the local, there's a lot of learning to be done. You have to do a lot of studying. And if you're not used to studying and not used to absorbing a vast amount of information in a short amount of time, you're going to struggle when it comes to going through the academy, because you normally have a test every week. And so you normally have a test every week. And because what will happen is you'll start going over material. Say you'll have your test on Friday morning, or Thursday morning. Now, most academies are closed on Fridays, but you'll have a test on Thursday morning. And then when you get back Sunday, you start going through material and that material you go through on Sunday, you're going to study it all the way up to Wednesday night. From Sunday to Wednesday, they're pouring information into you. And so, and you got to be able to pick it up very, very quickly, because I'm sorry, I put my do not disturb sign on my phone, but it rang. And so what happens is and so you have a lot of information to absorb, and so you got to absorb it in a very quick time. And if you're not used to studying, and if you're not used to doing that, then it's going to be very difficult for you.
Yeah, and just from what I know, not only do you have to know the policies of the department, you also have to be familiar with the local laws, because you can't just assume somebody's breaking the law and they're not breaking the law.
Right, and that's the thing. You have as a state. I'm state certified. I'm certified in the state of Mississippi, so I am versed. I was trained on the laws of the state of Mississippi, and so different municipalities and counties have ordinances that you also have to enforce. So I have two sets of laws that I have to enforce, and now the job that I have also federal statutes that I have to enforce also. So I have to be familiar with the state laws and the federal laws. And it takes a lot of learning. And my thing is, and really, as far as, like, say, for instance, when you do a paper, you have to do research. You have to know where to go to get your information. Do I have all that information in my head? No, but I do know where I can go and look it up and get what I need. And that's the thing, they're not expecting you to keep everything in your head. But at the same time, we have a resource library at work where we can, research statutes and find the right one to suit the crime that we're investigating.
That's crazy. I did not know that. That's awesome. Now, also, what type of training do people go through at the academy? Because you hear all the time, because like you said, there's a lot of education-based stuff, but for the people that are former athletes, all the physical stuff seems to be a big attraction to them as well.
Yeah. Well, my thing is, you have to be in shape. There's a physical requirement in the police academy. There's what we call mandatories that you have to pass. You have to have a physical PT, what's called a PT test. You have to have a test to get in. You have what's called a 50% standard that you have to pass to get in. And then to graduate, you have to pass what's called a 70% standard that you have to pass. So you'll go in, and I'll use my numbers from when I went. When I went to the police academy, I was 31 years old. and I had to do a mile and a half to get in. I had to do a mile and a half in 18 and a half minutes. But to graduate, I had to do it in 15 and a half minutes. Now, if you're younger, like young people, if you're 18, 19, 20 years old, you have to do it in 14 to get in and about 12 to get out.
That's
rolling. That's rolling. That's rolling. And that's for like local and county. But if with highway patrol, you do a mile and you have to do a mile in under 8 minutes. And it really doesn't matter how old you are. With them, with the highway patrol, it's not a age standard. Like with state law enforcement, you have an age bracket, 20 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 on up. With the highway patrol is 8 minutes. If you're male, it's 8 minutes. If you're female, it's 9 minutes, and that's it. So you have a push-up standard, and that varies from age. A shuttle run, that's part of it. Then you have what's called firearms. You have firearms training. You have to be well versed in your departmental issued firearm, shotgun, and you have training where you have to be able to shoot. And what I find a lot of young people, if they grew up in urban areas in the city, they're not used to firing weapons. You know, you get the good old country boys that used to go on hunting, they can grab a weapon and do what they need to do with it. But
we got plenty of those around here.
Sir?
We got plenty of those around here.
Yeah, especially at Velma Jackson, you got a lot of hunters up there, and but you'll find some people that, and I have found when I was in West Point, I had a coworker. She had never fired a gun before. Before she went to the police academy, she had never fired a weapon before. So we took her out and trained her, and she did very well. And I will say this: you'll find most females are better shooters than males, because what happens is, a female is like a computer. Garbage in is garbage out. Yeah. If they have a blank slate and they don't have any misconceptions of what to shoot, and if you teach them the right way from the beginning, they're going to end up being a better shooter. But a man, what happens is, oh, I'm macho. I know how to shoot. I know how to do this. And they won't necessarily do the small things as you try to teach them to make them a better shooter. Wow. And that's what I have found, that women are, as a whole, are better shooters than men. Then you have of course your firearms, and you have what's called PPCT, personal protection control tactics, and that is the actual hands-on how to arrest people, joint locks and things of that nature, to be able to control a subject, because sometimes you do have to use physical force to be able to subdue a subject. So you have, and that's a mandatory pass. And then you have driving, because we have times when you have to drive faster than the speed limit. You have to do we call emergency driving. So there's extensive training in being able to control your car while you're doing emergency driving. And then you have what's called state statutes, and those are the ones where you have to really show you have a grasp of the state statutes. And because what happens is, you have a general final that you have to pass to get your certification, but then driving, shooting, and state statutes and PPCT, those are individual tests that you have to pass to be able to graduate. Wow. Because if you fail, say for instance you fail firearms, they will let you continue to practice, but you don't graduate until you get your passing score. Yeah. But if you say, for instance, you fail driving and then you turn around and fail firearms, you're done. You have to come back, because they'll let you make it if you with a remedial with one, but if you're just not ready to go, then they're just going to have to send you back.
Yeah. Well, and before I get to some of the questions from the students, I just have one more about the opportunities for advancement, because obviously you've worked your way up into some higher paying and more responsibility roles. So if somebody wanted to get into this at a young age, what are some things they would need to do to advance up the ranks?
Well, education is always good. I'm not going to, it's not a requirement for the job, but if you want to raise up through the ranks, I would strongly suggest getting your bachelor's and getting your master's. If you want to be at what we call command level or executive level in a police department or sheriff's department or the highway patrol. And my thing is, I'm going to be honest with you. I told my son this: if you're going to get into law enforcement, go to school, get your degree, and then go federal, because there's more opportunities for federal, because this is what you can do. You go, we're going to use Jackson State as an example. You go to Jackson State, they have a very good criminal justice program. They have internship opportunities with the federal government. You go to Jackson State, you get an internship, you go become a federal agent, U.S. Marshal, FBI agent, Secret Service, Homeland Security, the whole 9 yards. You do 20 good years with them. Okay. And so you go, you graduate when you're 22, you start with them, you work 20, 25 years. You're 47 years old. You can come back and you can get a job. If, say, for instance, they send you to, they bring you back to Mississippi. You're going to meet people. And then when you retire from your federal job, you can turn around and get a state job and then have a second retirement.
Wow.
That's what I would suggest for my child. But if you want to stay in the state, then what I would suggest is you go get your education and then just start. There's always opportunities. There are always, and I will always say this, the cream is going to rise to the top. Whatever job that you have, and I will say this as young people in ninth grade, if you have a job, do the best job that you can do. If you're working at McDonald's and they got you making the fries, you be the best fry guy that you can be. Start having good work habits now, because that will translate into good work habits when you go to school. That will translate into good work habits when you go and get your job. Because I have helped so many people. People have helped me because I did a good job, and I have turned and helped people because they did a good job. And it's a big community. I got people calling me about jobs all the time, or, hey, what about this person? What about that person? And I'm very honest, and I'll tell them, I'm not going to ruin my reputation for you if you're not up to par. But if you're up to par, I'll give you the golden ticket, and I will tell them, hey, this person is good, and I'm going to tell them the good and the bad. And if there's not any bad to tell them, then that's even better for you.
Absolutely. Well, I do have some questions I want to get to from the kids, and these are
Sure.
all graders. This first one is Christian Dawson, and he asked, what actions do you think can be taken to ensure good relations with the public and the police?
Okay, that's a good one. The people have to understand and get to know their community. You have to get to know the community you serve. And how I would do is, it would be days when I was in West Point in the morning time, I would get out, and if I saw somebody working in their yard, I'd get out and talk to them. And you'd be surprised, especially if the person doesn't look like you, you'd be surprised how much you actually have in common if you just gave them a chance. And I've gotten to know people, and I have had people come to my defense, even without me being there, because you had somebody in the crowd that really didn't know me. Oh, he's this, he's that. They said, no, he's not like that. You don't know him. He has helped me. He's done this for me, and he's not that type of person. And if you're good to people, they're going to come to your aid. And that's just happened to me so many times in my career.
Absolutely, and well deserved. And I tend to agree with them. Now, this is Maya Dixon, and she asked, do you think the line of work is dangerous for? I'm trying to think of word. Do you think the line of work you are in is dangerous? Basically, what she's asking.
Yes, it is. I'm gonna be honest with you. Yes, it is. I have had situations where I had to fight for my life. I'm not gonna lie to you. But at the same time, it's not every day. And my thing is, if you're prepared, and this is my belief. I'm a Christian, and I believe, and I have a relationship with the Lord, and I believe the Lord protects me. And my thing is, I feel that I am called to this profession, and I feel if I am called to this profession, He's gonna watch over me. And my thing is, I'm not afraid to lay down my life, but I'm not ready to go now. But if it's my time, it's just my time, and you really can't. You have to be careful of what you do and what you say and the situations you put yourself in. But you can't go into the job worried about it being dangerous, because if that's the case, you're going to freeze up and you're not going to come home at night.
Yeah. Now this is Anthony Walker, And he asked, have you ever felt sorry for someone you had to?
Yes. Yes. Because you have people that are put in bad situations. Their backs up against the wall and they do things out of desperation. And I always would tell the young officers that I was training that we're no better than the person that's in the back seat. I said, we're all one bad decision away from going to jail.
Absolutely.
And so we have to take that in mind. And so there's a lot of times that I've felt sorry for someone because they've done some things out of desperation, but that doesn't take away the fact that they had to be held responsible for their actions.
I agree 100%. And I always say, they made a bad decision, but that could happen to anybody. So it's important that everybody does the right thing. This is Danielle Brown, and she asked, have you ever been wounded or injured on the job?
No. I've had to fight for my life, but I've never been shot. I had some twisted ankles and some hamstrings from running, but nothing to the point where it required me being in the hospital.
Okay. Now, one thing I meant to ask too, I forgot about this is, we see the show. I'm a big fan of the show 911 and some of that stuff. How realistic is a lot of this stuff portrayed in drama, or is it just completely false the way it's portrayed for the most part?
Well, I came up watching the show Cops, and Cops is very realistic. But what you got to understand is they're doing that for the drama. They're doing that for. Now, is that how that person's shift is? 8 hours, 5 days a week? No. As a law enforcement officer, you probably have 10% excitement, 15% excitement, and probably 75% of just doing nothing. We have calls for service, but a lot of it is, I used to work 12 hours. On a typical day, we get to work at 6. I play on the computer to about 7, and then go out and monitor traffic for a while, or go get something to eat, then monitor traffic. And then after everybody's at work and in the middle of the day, there's really not much to do. You have calls for service. At night's a little different, depending on the time of day. Some areas you stay busy from the time you get to work and to the time you leave. But other places, you don't do a lot of work. So it kind of varies, but Cops is a good depiction of when things go bad or when the excitement happens. But on the flip side, I have been at work where I didn't make any traffic stops, didn't have any calls for service other than bank escorts, escorting somebody to the bank for a whole 12 hours. And I put a whole bunch of miles on the car because all I did was just ride around in circles. Because you have days like that. But then you have days when you get to work, you got calls waiting for you, and you run all night long. And then when you get off work at 6 o'clock that morning, you just now started to slow down. And you're like, and you got reports, 5 or 6 reports to do. And you're like, you know what? I'll do them the night when I get here. So I've had nights like that where I ran from the time I got there to the time I got off. And then I've had days where I didn't do anything.
Well, it sounds like if you want to do a career where there's not the same thing every day, this might be a good one to get into.
And that's the thing. And I can honestly say, I have been in law enforcement in one shape or form or fashion or another since 1996. And no 2 days are ever the same. Awesome. No 2 days are ever the same. And if you don't like redundancy, some people like the comfort of doing the same thing every day. And that's not me. I do the same general job every day, but I don't do the same thing. Every day is different. And that's a good thing because it keeps you on your toes. It keeps you thinking, and you don't get complacent because you don't ever know what you're going to get into. So you got to be ready.
Yeah. And that's why you said, as long as you're trained for it, you're prepared for it. I just got one more from students. This is Alonzo Johnson. And he asked, what's the hardest part about remaining calm in a stressful situation?
You said it. It's hard. Sometimes it is hard to remain calm because we're all people. We're all, you and Greg and I are men. And so you have, people like to poke, they like to push your buttons. And what I have found that I have matured as I've gotten older, I've matured because a buddy of mine who was a state trooper in Michigan would always tell me the pen is mightier than the sword. And my thing is, you can get your point across, because a lot of times people will try to push your buttons because they know they're wrong. They know they're in a situation where they're getting ready to go to jail. But if they think that if they can push your buttons and they get you to do something that you're not supposed to do, it's going to help their situation, whether it be you hit them or say something or anything like that. They want to get you to react so they can say, well, see, he did this, and so I need to get out of my trouble. And I have found that it's funny to me because when I was a young man, I used to bristle up a lot. But as I got older and understand that I have the power, when I get done. Now, I have a quick story. Gentleman was intoxicated. He was at a store. He was trying to buy more alcohol and they wouldn't let him. So we ended up putting him in jail. And he was using profanity, cutting up and clowning. I told him, I said, look, stop cursing and stop doing this. And he kept on. I said, every time you curse, it's going to cost you $275. That's what the fine was for public profanity. So he just kept talking. When he got ready to bail out, his bond was so high, he didn't understand. And the jailer said, well, that man told you to stop saying that and stop acting up. You wouldn't stop. So he charged you every time you said something, he charged you. And I laughed about it because when he went to court, he was stuttering and he was embarrassed because he was sober by then. So, sometimes it is hard, but you have to understand that that's part of your training. You got to put yourself above that. You got to say, hey, they can talk, but I would always tell them I don't get paid to get a whooping. So,
all right. Well, man, we're almost out of time, and I thank you so much for making some time for us today.
Sure.
But before we go, I really want to hit on the fact that obviously with the media portrayals, there's a lot of bad press about law enforcement in this country. But you're a perfect example of somebody that really does serve the community, and I really would like to hear your thoughts on how much the law enforcement agencies really do for our communities, and especially our rural Black communities, because they felt, and rightfully so, they have felt neglected for so long. But that trend is trying to change within the law enforcement ranks. So, can you just talk about that very briefly before we go?
There's a lot of good that law enforcement does, and don't get me wrong, there's bad apples, and there's bad apples in every profession. There's bad teachers, there's bad police officers, there's bad garbage men. There's bad doctors, there's bad lawyers. So, but what happens is when something happens in law enforcement with this age of everybody's got a cell phone camera, it's a spotlight is shined upon people and upon law enforcement. It makes our job a lot more difficult to do. And as far as the Black communities, they've been underserved for many, many, many years, and the trend is for us to stand up for ourselves. But sometimes you can stand up for yourself, but you have to do it in the right way. That's my thing I have no problem with someone speaking up for themselves, but at the same time, you got to do it in the right way. And I will say this real quickly. You stand up for yourself, but on side of the road is not the time for you to stand up for yourself.
Absolutely.
The thing about it is that you're already you're at a position of being a subordinate, because the law enforcement officer has the upper hand because they have the law behind them and they have things on their belt that could end your life. And if you don't hear anything else from this conversation, hold your peace. And my thing is, whether or not you did what they accused you of, take the ticket and live to fight another day. You can go to court and fight that ticket. But if you get to cutting up on the side of that road and they have to do something to you, whether that traffic stop was legitimate or not, that all goes out the window because it's escalated into something totally different than what the original stop was for. Like I tell my son is 20 years old. When he started driving, I told him, if you get stopped, it's yes, sir, no, sir. Give them what they asked for and do not respond if they try to bait you into an argument and you come home. Because the bottom line is, young people, go home to your parents. Let your parents fight your battles. You don't argue on the side of the road with a law enforcement officer because it's not going in good for you. Please, if you have not learned anything from this conversation, learn that that is not the place to they might be wrong, and sometimes they are wrong. But what we need you to do is we need you as young people just to make it home. And that's what I want you to do. You make it home, you get with your folks, and there's other avenues where you can remedy the situation. But if you're gone, you can't come back from that. There's no
both know people that are more than capable of helping.
Right. There's a lot of people that are more than willing to help you, but you gotta get home for them to help you. You might be mad, and my thing is they may talk to you crazy, but at the end of the day, those are just words. All those are just words, and you can always come back from that. You can't come back from when your heart stops beating. You can't do it.
No, good stuff, man, and just great advice and such a great career path. And we thank you for all the service you do for the state and what we do for our community and protecting those who are vulnerable with the Attorney General's office. Thank you so much, and always good to see you, my man. I'll see you very soon.
All right, man. Take care. Anything I can do for you, by all means, let me know. Take care, brother.
I'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Bye-bye.